You're ruining your own relationships and you don't even know it. Every time you explain your feelings to him, every time you text back within minutes, every time you try to communicate better to fix problems, you're actually pushing him further away. I know this sounds backwards because everything you've been told about relationships is a lie. While you're desperately trying to create connection through more talking, more sharing, more emotional availability, the women who have men completely addicted to them are doing something that will blow your mind. They're saying almost nothing at all. You've been lied to. The idea that you need to be agreeable, accommodating, and endlessly understanding to win a man's heart, that's exactly why you're exhausted, undervalued, and wondering why he's not as invested as you are. High-value women don't talk to men the way society expects them to. They talk to men the way queens talk to everyone, with a combination of warmth and unwavering standards that makes the right man feel like he's discovered something rare. If you've ever found yourself over-explaining your worth, softening your boundaries, or tiptoeing around his feelings while neglecting your own, you're about to discover why that approach keeps you stuck in the cycle of almost relationships and emotional unavailability. Because here's what I know for certain. The way you talk to a man in the first few conversations will determine whether he sees you as a woman he pursues or a woman he settles for. Welcome to the conversation that will completely shift your understanding of feminine power in communication. This isn't about manipulation, mind games, or pretending to be someone you're not. This is about unlocking the version of yourself that naturally commands respect, creates deep attraction, and inspires the kind of devotion that lasts. In the next few minutes, we're diving deep into the psychology of what makes certain women absolutely irresistible in conversation, why traditional advice keeps you playing small, and the specific words, energy, and presence that transform how men see you and treat you. This isn't theory. This is the exact communication blueprint that separates women who are chosen from women who are chased. So if you're ready to stop wondering why your conversations with men feel like uphill battles, ready to stop feeling like you're always giving more than you receive, and ready to step into the magnetic communication style that makes the right man lean in and listen like his life depends on it, then this is your moment. A high-value woman in communication has mastered something far more powerful than perfect words. She's mastered the art of speaking from a place of complete emotional security. Her worth doesn't fluctuate based on his response. Her confidence doesn't depend on his approval. Her peace doesn't get disturbed by his moods, his silence, or his reactions. This is what sets her apart. She doesn't communicate to get something from him. She doesn't talk to convince him of her value, to make him like her more, or to manage his emotions. She communicates to share her authentic experience, to create genuine connection, and to see if he's capable of meeting her energy. A high-value woman speaks with the quiet assurance of someone who knows she has options. Not because she's playing games or trying to seem unavailable, but because she genuinely values herself enough to walk away from connections that don't serve her highest good. That energy is impossible to fake and absolutely magnetic to experience. She doesn't overshare to create intimacy. She doesn't undershare to seem mysterious. She shares what feels authentic to her in that moment and trusts that the right person will appreciate her transparency while the wrong person will reveal themselves through their inability to handle her truth. Here's something most women miss entirely. A high-value woman doesn't communicate to be understood by everyone. She communicates to be deeply understood by the right someone. She'd rather be polarizing and attract her perfect match than be generic and attract everyone who isn't truly compatible with her essence. She sets the emotional tone of every interaction, not through force or manipulation, but through her unshakable inner stability. She doesn't match negative energy with negative energy. She doesn't reward bad behavior with more attention. She responds to what's actually happening, not to her fears about what might happen. And perhaps most importantly, a high-value woman in communication never communicates from a place of lack. She doesn't speak from the fear of losing him, the anxiety of not being enough, or the desperation to be chosen. She speaks from the abundance of knowing that she's already whole, already valuable, and already deserving of the love she desires. The communication patterns that keep intelligent, beautiful, successful women stuck in situationships and almost relationships are so common that they've become normalized, but they're absolutely deadly to attraction and genuine connection. The first and most damaging mistake is communicating from a place of emotional urgency. This shows up when you feel like you need to respond immediately to his texts, when you feel compelled to address every issue the moment it arises, or when you find yourself having serious conversations at the worst possible times because your emotions can't wait. Emotional urgency communicates insecurity, lack of self-control, and an inability to self-regulate. Men are biologically wired to be attracted to women who can remain calm under pressure because it signals emotional strength. When you communicate with urgency, you're essentially telling him that your emotions control you. The second fatal mistake is explaining your worth instead of embodying it. This happens when you find yourself defending your standards, justifying your boundaries, or trying to convince him why he should treat you better. High-value women never explain their value because their energy and behavior demonstrate it so clearly that explanation becomes unnecessary. When you explain your worth, you're operating from the assumption that he doesn't already see it, which means you don't fully see it yourself. That energy of self-doubt seeps into every word you speak and undermines the very message you're trying to convey. Another devastating mistake is matching his emotional investment level instead of maintaining your own standards. This shows up when you mirror his texting frequency, when you become less available because he's less available, or when you start putting in less effort because you feel like you're giving more than you're receiving. This creates a downward spiral where both of you are holding back, waiting for the other person to step up first. High-value women don't play these games. They show up as themselves consistently and let his response reveal whether he's capable of matching their energy or not. The mistake that kills more potential relationships than almost anything else is communicating your needs as complaints instead of invitations. When you say things like, "You never call me," or "You don't make enough effort," you're focusing on what's wrong instead of clearly expressing what you'd love to experience. This puts him in defensive mode. Yes, ma'am, intense. Owed and makes him feel like he's failing rather than inspired to step up. High-value communication focuses on what you want to create together, not what's currently missing. Perhaps the most subtle but powerful mistake is communicating without boundaries. This happens when you're available for every conversation he wants to have, when you discuss topics that make you uncomfortable because you don't want to seem difficult, or when you tolerate disrespectful communication. Without boundaries, your communication lacks the tension that creates attraction. Everything becomes too easy, too available, too predictable. High-value women understand that boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're standards that invite the right people deeper while filtering out those who aren't willing to rise to meet them. Understanding the psychology behind what makes certain women absolutely magnetic in conversation is the key to transforming how men respond to you. This goes much deeper into how the human brain processes attraction, connection, and emotional safety. At a neurological level, men's brains are wired to be attracted to women who create what psychologists call optimal arousal. This means the perfect balance of comfort and excitement, safety and unpredictability, warmth and challenge. Most women lean too heavily in one direction, creating either too much comfort or too much chaos. High-value women have mastered the art of being simultaneously soothing and stimulating. They create emotional safety through their groundedness and self-assurance, but they also create excitement through their authenticity and refusal to be predictable or easily categorized. Men are also deeply attracted to what psychologists call non-contingent self-worth. This means your sense of value doesn't depend on external validation or approval. When a woman's mood, energy and self-perception remain stable regardless of how a man responds to her, it triggers a subconscious recognition of emotional strength that men find incredibly attractive. Another crucial psychological factor is what researchers call challenge theory. People are most attracted to things that require some effort to obtain but aren't impossible to achieve. High-value women naturally embody this balance by being warm and open while also maintaining standards and boundaries that require men to step up. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, which is one of the most powerful psychological principles for creating lasting attraction. When positive interactions are consistent but not constant, when warmth is genuine but not unlimited, it creates a psychological pattern that the brain finds irresistibly engaging. High-value women also understand the power of mirror neurons. These are brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. This means that the energy you bring to a conversation literally influences the energy he brings back. When you communicate with calm confidence, emotional stability, and genuine warmth, you activate mirror neurons that encourage him to match that energy. When you communicate with anxiety, neediness, or emotional chaos, you trigger defensive responses that make him want to pull away. Perhaps most importantly, magnetic communication triggers what psychologists call approach motivation rather than avoidance motivation. When a man talks to a high-value woman, his brain focuses on what he might gain from the interaction rather than what he might lose. Men don't just want to be with women they find attractive. They want to be with women who make them feel attractive, capable, and emotionally safe. High-value communication creates this feeling effortlessly by focusing on connection rather than correction, on appreciation rather than criticism, and on possibility rather than problems. Feminine power in communication is about communicating from a place of deep inner knowing that your voice matters, your feelings are valid, and your standards are non-negotiable. Feminine power speaks in I statements rather than you accusations. Instead of saying, you never follow through on your promises, feminine power says, I feel disconnected when plans keep changing, and I'd love to find a way for us to create more reliability together. This approach invites collaboration rather than creating defensiveness. It's also about the strategic use of silence and space. Feminine power doesn't feel compelled to fill every pause in conversation or to have an immediate response to everything. It understands that silence can be more powerful than words, that pauses allow ideas to land and emotions to be felt. This comfort with silence communicates several things simultaneously. It shows that you're comfortable with yourself, that you don't need constant validation, and that you're truly listening rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. Men find this incredibly rare and attractive. Feminine power also shows up in how you handle conflict or disagreement. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations or approaching them with aggression, feminine power addresses issues with what I call steel wrapped in silk. Your message is clear, direct, and unwavering, but your delivery is calm, respectful, and emotionally regulated. For example, if a man says something disrespectful, feminine power doesn't ignore it or respond with equal disrespect. It might say something like, I can see you're frustrated and I want to understand where you're coming from, but that tone doesn't work for me. Can we try this conversation again? Another aspect of feminine power is the ability to express vulnerability without losing your strength. This means you can share your feelings, admit when you're hurt, and ask for what you need without becoming a victim or expecting him to fix your emotional state. Feminine power never apologizes for its existence, needs, or standards. It doesn't say, I'm sorry, but could you maybe possibly consider? It says, I'd love it if we could. Or something that would feel really good to me is it makes requests with confidence and accepts responses with grace. Perhaps most importantly, feminine power communicates from abundance rather than scarcity. It doesn't speak from the fear of losing him or the desperation to keep him. It speaks from the knowledge that you're a prize worth winning and that the right man will recognize and cherish that truth. The specific language you use when talking to men can either build bridges to intimacy or create walls that keep you emotionally distant. High-value women have mastered the art of using words that create safety, inspire vulnerability, and deepen connection naturally. One of the most powerful phrases is, "help me understand." This works because it assumes positive intent while still addressing something that doesn't feel right to you. Instead of, "why did you do that?" which can sound accusatory, "help me understand your perspective on this," invites him to share without feeling attacked. Another incredibly connecting phrase is, "I feel safe sharing this with you." This tells him that you see him as trustworthy, creates a sense of privilege and intimacy, and models the kind of emotional openness that encourages him to reciprocate. When you want to express appreciation, high-value women don't just say thank you. They say things like, "I love how thoughtful you are," or "the way you handled that situation made me feel so proud to be with you." These statements affirm his identity and character, which creates much deeper emotional impact. For setting boundaries, high-value language sounds like "something that would feel really good to me is," rather than "you need to stop." This approach focuses on what you want to create rather than what you want to eliminate. When he shares something vulnerable, instead of immediately offering advice, try phrases like, "that sounds really challenging," or "I can hear how much that matters to you." These responses validate his experience without taking over the conversation. One of the most underutilized but powerful phrases is, "I trust your judgment on this." Men deeply crave feeling respected and trusted by the women they care about. When you express confidence in his ability to handle situations, it strengthens his sense of masculine identity. For moments when you need to express disappointment without creating defensiveness, try, "I had imagined this going differently, and I'm feeling a bit disappointed. Can we talk about how to handle this better next time?" This owns your feelings while focusing on future solutions. The key to all of these phrases is that they come from a place of emotional authenticity rather than strategic manipulation. They work because they're honest expressions of your internal experience delivered in ways that invite connection rather than defensiveness. The difference between conversations that leave men thinking about you for days and conversations that are quickly forgotten comes down to how you engage his mind, emotions, and curiosity simultaneously. The foundation of irresistible conversation is what I call emotional texture. This means your responses have layers. You're not just exchanging information or being polite. You're sharing perspectives, revealing personality, and creating moments of genuine connection. For example, if he asks what you did today, instead of listing activities, you might say, "I had one of those days where everything felt aligned. I got to spend time working on something I'm passionate about, had a conversation that made me think differently about something, and ended the day feeling grateful. What about you? Did you have any moments today that felt particularly good?" This response gives him insight into your values and mindset, creates a positive emotional tone, and asks a question that invites him to go deeper than surface level. High-value women also master the art of what I call strategic vulnerability. This means sharing something real about yourself that creates connection without oversharing. It might sound like, "I realized today that I'm someone who needs a few minutes of quiet when I get home to transition from work mode to personal mode. It's funny how long it took me to figure out something so simple about myself." Another key element is using what psychologists call positive interruption. If he starts complaining extensively about work instead of just listening passively, you might say, "that sounds frustrating. What's something good that's happening in your life right now that balances out some of that stress?" This shows that you're listening and empathetic, but you're not willing to get stuck in negative energy. It positions you as someone who brings lightness and perspective rather than someone who gets dragged down by problems. The art of asking questions that reveal character is another crucial skill. Instead of asking, "What do you do for work?" try, "What's something you're working on that you're excited about?" Instead of, "Do you like traveling?" ask, "What's a place that changed your perspective on something?" These questions invite more meaningful responses and give you better insight into who he really is beyond surface level facts. They also position you as someone who cares about depth and substance. Perhaps most importantly, irresistible conversation requires being fully present. This means putting away distractions, listening to understand rather than listening to respond, and allowing natural pauses when they occur. Your presence and attention are rare gifts, and men will remember how you made them feel heard and seen. High-value boundaries are invitations for the right people to come closer while naturally filtering out those who aren't capable of respecting your standards. Boundaries that attract don't push men away. They inspire the right men to step up. The key to attractive boundaries is that they come from self-love, not self-protection. When you set boundaries from fear, they feel restrictive and cold. When you set them from love for yourself and respect for the connection, they feel like standards that create a better experience for both of you. For example, if a man consistently texts you late at night without investing in actual plans, a love-based boundary sounds like, "I love connecting with you, and I find I'm much more present for our conversations when we talk earlier in the evening."